Assalamualaikum. I'm Watanabe and colleagues demonstrated a radial scanning of the prostate and the bladder, which demonstrated the multiple abnormalities of the prostate and the bladder, and they produced a chair. They basically built a chair which was known as a magician's chair. As we can see in this diagram, this is the picture of the magician's chair with a hole in the center of the it. So the patients are allowed to sit in this chair, and the transducer probe was passed through this hole into the rectum of the patient with the subsequent obtained of these prostatic images. Later on in 1971, Goldberg and Pollack produced the A-mode ultrasonography, which was at that time, it was used to differentiate between the solid, cystic, and the complex renal masses with the accuracy of 96%. Then in 1974, Holm and Northwood introduced a transurethral ultrasonic device. This device was at that time interchangeable with the optics that were used during the cystoscopy. And this device was used to assess the prostatic volume, the tumor bladder penetration, and used to assess during the transurethral section of the prostate. Later on in 1976, Perry and the colleagues were the first to use the Doppler as a sonic stethoscope in their workup of the patients with an acute scrotum. And later, the ultrasound further evolved in the field of the urology with the demonstration of the renal Doppler to evaluate the renal artery stenosis from the normal and to demonstrate the acute rejection in the renal transplanted patients. Now, coming towards the basic physical principles of the ultrasounds, so the ultrasound imaging is basically obtained as a result of the interaction of the sound waves with the tissues and the structures that are present inside the body, and it has a specific frequency, and the frequencies range of the ultrasound from 2 to approximately 15 megahertz, although even higher frequencies may be used in some situations. So the transducer frequency probe, which is usually used, is between 2 megahertz to 10 megahertz, for example 2.5 to 3.5 for the general abdominal imaging, and 5 to 10 megahertz for the superficial imaging, which are the high frequency transducers. So we need to understand this equation for further understanding of the ultrasound. That is the wavelength, which is inversely proportional to the frequency and directly proportional to the velocity. The frequency here, the basic physics, the number of the cycles per second, and the unit is denoted by the hertz, whereas the wavelength denoted by the lambda, and it is the distance covered by the one cycle in a frequency. So this is a pictorial representation of the basics of the ultrasound, the relationship between the wavelength and the frequency. So over the left side, we can see that there are multiple cycles per second, that there are multiple frequency or the higher frequency can be noted. However, the wavelength, which is demarcated by the arrow, is here is the reduce, that is short. So whenever there is a high frequency, there will be the high resolution of the image, but due to the shorter wavelength, it has the property of lesser penetration into the deep tissues. Whereas on the other side, we can appreciate that there are low frequencies, lesser number of the cycles per second. But here, now the wavelength has been increased. There is a long wavelength. So whenever there is a low frequency waves, there will be the low resolution of the image. But since the wavelength has been higher, so it will be penetrate deep into the tissues. The same concept, smaller the wavelength, higher frequency, higher the resolution, but the lesser will be the penetration because of the lesser wavelength or short wavelength. So therefore, the high frequency probes like 5 to 10 megahertz will be used, and this will be applicable for the pediatric population and used for the evaluation of the superficial structures like in the vascular. So, on the other hand, the higher wavelength with the lesser frequency, the less resolution, and because of the higher wavelength, there will be the deeper penetration. And because of the low frequency, low resolution, low frequency probes between 2 to 5 megahertz will be used, which provide the better penetration, and lower resolution can be used to image the deeper structures. Now, how the ultrasound creates a picture, the very well-known piezoelectric effect. So, this is a picture of the transducer over the left side. So, basically, they are the piezoelectric crystals. They are very minute. They cannot see through the naked eye. They are packed within the ultrasound transducers. Whenever the electric current is applied to these piezoelectric crystals, they contract and expand. And at the same time, at the same frequency, the electric current is being converted into the mechanical current, and then this is being transmitted to inside the body. And conversely, when the beam is from the inside of the body is reflected back to the transducer, And again, the piezoelectric crystals contract and expand, resulting into the conversion of the mechanical energy into the electrical energy. And hence, the image can be formed on the monitor. So basically, this is the conversion of the electrical energy into the mechanical energy and then vice versa. So the ultrasound tissue interaction requires the basic physical principles. So first, we have to go through this attenuation process. So attenuation, in simple words, it is the gradual weakening of the ultrasound wave when it passes through the tissue. And there are many factors that can contribute to the attenuation of the sound wave. That is the reflection, refraction, absorption, and the scattering. So the basic mechanism of acoustic impedance is important to understand for the ultrasound. So acoustic impedance, it is the resistance to the ultrasound propagation as it passes through the tissue, some kind of resistance or the hurdle in the passage of the ultrasound wave in the tissue. That can be labeled as the acoustic impedance. So it can be determined by multiplying the density into the speed of the sound waves. So hence we can calculate the acoustic impedance. So if the density of the tissue increases, the density will increase because there is a directly proportional relationship. So in this table, as we can see that there is a high density of the bone. At the same time, the acoustic impedance of this bone is increased. So another concept is the acoustic impedance mismatch. So whenever there is greater the difference between the two media, that is two tissues like soft tissue or the air or soft tissue or the bone, the greater will be the reflection from the tissue and the lesser will be the penetration. All the waves will be reflected back to the transducer because of the high acoustic impedance mismatch. So the difference in the acoustic impedance called as the acoustic impedance mismatch, and this will result in a great reflection and a lower transmission. Now, this concept is applicable here in case of the reflection. Reflection, in simple words, it takes place when all the ultrasound waves are reflected back to the transducer rather than being absorbed or penetrate. So, the portion of the ultrasound wave that is reflected is determined by the difference in the acoustic impedance. So, as we have discussed with the concept of the acoustic impedance in this diagram, this is showing the transducer reflecting the ultrasound waves to the two media, the soft tissue in comparison to the air and bone. All are with the high acoustic impedance mismatch, resulting into the reflection of all the sound waves back to the transducer. Refraction, again with the same concept, it occurs when the ultrasounds, when the two adjacent tissues have the slightly different impedance value. In the previous one, there was a high level of the impedance value mismatch. In the reflection, there is a slight different impedance mismatch. So so rather all the waves are reflected. Some of the waves are refracted. So coming towards the artifacts. So artifacts are basically when the ultrasound image has been formed as a result of the tissue and the sound interaction. Sometimes it does not resemble the normal anatomy of the normal underlying anatomy. So this condition is known as the artifacts when it does not resemble the normal underlying anatomy. And these misinterpretations are called as the artifacts, and these are sometimes misleading, and sometimes if they are properly recognized or differentiate, then it can lead to the diagnosis as well. So two kinds of the artifacts are there. First one is the reverberation artifact, and other one is the acoustic shadow. So the reverberation artifacts, it occurs when an ultrasound beam encounters with two strong parallel reflectors. In this image, we can appreciate when the ultrasound beam reflects back and forth between the reflector, that is reverberates. The ultrasound transducer interprets the sound waves returning as a deeper structure since it took longer for the wave to return to the transducer. Like for example, in this image, we can see that this is the linear one is the echoes, basically the echoes reflecting from the anterior abdominal wall, and this one is the kidney, and these are the echoes that are reflecting over the lateral portion of the kidney, mimicking as the subcapsular hematoma. So this is the false presentation. So acoustic shadowing, rectal organ is this anterior abdominal wall. The strong echoes from it will reflect the parallel to this lateral portion of the kidney, and as a result of which this will mimic as this will produce. This phenomena also happens when there are gas bubbles inside the bowel tubes. Multiple gas bubbles, they act as individual reflecting cells. There will be continuous back and forth motion of the waves between the two adjacent structures. So acoustic shadowing, acoustic shadowing again a form of an ultrasound artifact. So basically, the concept behind the acoustic shadowing is when the structures are of highest density, like bone. So they are the highly reflectors. So when they are highly reflectors, they return all of the sound waves back to the transducer and allowing almost no waves to penetrate into the deep tissues. So as a result of which there will be the formation of this linear hyperechoic this hyperechoic image, which shows a bright hyperechoic image, and there the hypoechoic shadow can be appreciated on the back of it. So this is the diagrammatic representation of the acoustic shadowing. So it is commonly seen in those objects which are of high density, like calcified gallstone or the bone, or at an interface with a high acoustic impedance mismatch. As we have already discussed, that is in case of the soft tissue or DA. Plastic shadowing she has described an artifact, but if you're familiar with it, it helps with the diagnosis. Is anyone here familiar with the concept of acoustic window? What is an acoustic window? Anybody else? Acoustic window forms when there is a cystic object in the way of your ultrasound probe. For example, a renal cyst that provides a window because we know that fluids cause minimal impedance as compared to the solid tissue adjacent to the cyst. So the structures that are beyond the cyst will appear hyperechoic because those waves were less disturbed when they were passing through the cyst. That will cause that cyst will provide an acoustic window, and the images posterior to it will appear hyperechoic, although they are normal, right? That is coming towards the ultrasound mode. So there are various modes, but we are going to discuss particularly the B mode and the color doppler. First, we will be discussing the B mode. B mode is the normal mode of the ultrasound, or the grayscale mode, which is most commonly employed method, and it provides a real-time 2D images in gray. And the B mode image bears a basically close resemblance to the anatomy, which might be seen by the eye if the body could be cut to the same plane. So basically, the evaluation of the grayscale imaging requires the ability to recognize the normal patterns or the ecodensity of the anatomy history. Another mode of the ultrasound is the Doppler ultrasound, which we all are quite familiar with. So the Doppler ultrasound, the mechanism of the Doppler ultrasound is the sound waves of a certain frequency that will be shifted or changed based on the direction and the velocity of the moving object. So the basic thing is the direction and the velocity that is actually added in addition to the beam mode ultrasound. It allows for the characterization of the motion, most commonly the motion of the blood through the vessels, but also useful for detecting the flow of the urine. So color Doppler, it allows for the evaluation of the velocity and the direction of the motion. There has been the particular color coding that is applied to this. For example, the blue color is away from the transducer, and the red color is actually towards the transducer. So also the velocity of the sound wave depends on the intensity of the light. As brighter the color, the higher will be the velocity. And the advantages is that it will helps us in detection of the blood flow in different organs like kidney, penis, prostate, bladder, kidney, penis, bladder, and the prostate. And also it helps us in the detection of the urethral jet, that is the emergence of the urine from the both urethral orifices. So here is the ultrasound of the kidney in which the Doppler has been applied. Doppler mode has been applied and show the normal blood flow through the entire kidney. Now another mode is the color flow with the spectral display. So this phenomena basically it allows us the interrogation of the particular areas for the flow and the displays as it has a continuous waveform. It is used to evaluate the pattern and the velocity of the blood flow in the intrarenal of the penile vasculature. The most commonly used is the resistive index. So on the right side, we can see there is a color Doppler which has been applied to the kidney, and the red color means towards the transducer, and it shows the normal flow of the renal artery, the low resistance flow of the renal artery with a normal RI of 0.5 to 0.7. Whereas on the right side, we can see that there is a hypoechoic area noted over the lateral spectrum of the kidney, wedge-shaped hypoechoic area, whereas the rest of the kidney is produced normally. So this indicates wedge-shaped hypoechoic segmental part. Now moving towards the contrast agents in the ultrasound. So the contrast agents are basically these are the FDA approved agents with the good safety profile, and these are the intravenous compounds. These are commercially available contrast media, and they are administered intravenously to the patient's systemic circulation, and they are containing the microbubbles, gas containing the microbubbles actually. So once they are administered into the systemic circulation, they are very small in the size, like 1 to 4 micrometers, so that they do not reach the vascular endothelium. So they have this property of enhanced ecogenicity of the blood and the tissue. That is, they allow all the waste to reflect back to the transducer. So it is particularly useful in the prostate ultrasound by noticing the areas of the increased vascularity. So on the left side, there is a normal truss image on in a grayscale mode, which shows a suspicious hypoechoic area over the left side. Whereas on the right side, there is this the contrast enhanced truss image showing the arrows indicated or the increased vascularity. Now, the patient safety, basically the ultrasound waves resulting into the transmission of the certain uh, waves inside the human body, and it will result into the production of certain biological effects. So these effects are further categorized into the mechanical effects and the thermal effects, and it will be hazardous to the patient's health. So the mechanical effects produces their effect with the help of the process which is known as a cavitation. Cavitation is basically occurs when the gas forming molecules they expand and collapse with the resultant liberation of the large amount of the energy, which will ultimately resulting into the damage of the surrounding tissues. The thermal effect resulting into the tissue heating, this occurs at the molecular levels because of the absorption of the energy. So thermal effects is basically dependent upon the many factors like the mode of the imaging, the transducer frequency, uh, the time of the exposure. So there are two indices that are documented. First is the mechanical index and the thermal index, the other one. These are calculated estimates of the potential for the bio effects of the ultrasonography. So both indices, they are displayed on the monitor, and the practitioner should be aware of their location on the monitor. So these indices are there, but they are not considered as the safety limits. So the urologists are required to follow the ALARA principles. The intent of the ALARA principles is to limit the energy imparted to the patient. And the principles including the keeping the power outputs low, using the appropriate scanning modes, limiting the examination times, adjusting the focus and the frequency, and using the cine function during the documentation. Now, the clinical urological ultrasound. So we are going to discuss the few ultrasounds which we are doing it in the field of urology. So first we will be discussing the renal ultrasound. So the indications of the renal ultrasound are, as we all know very well, that we can do this in case of the assessment of the renal and the perirenal masses, in the assessment of the dilated upper urinary tract, for the flank pain during pregnancy, for hematuria evaluation, for the assessment of the effects of the volume on the upper tract, for the percutaneous access to the renal collecting system, for guidance of the biopsies, post-operative evaluation of the patients with the renal and the uterus surgery, and the post-operative evaluation of the renal transplant patients. So the technique is basically the transducer, as I have already mentioned, that because of the high penetration power, higher wavelength, low frequency transducer is used, that is of 3.5 to 5 megahertz, whereas the high frequency flows, they will be used for the pediatric patients and for the superficial structures. So we will locate the kidney. First of all, we locate the right kidney in the midclavicular line, then move it towards the right upper quadrant laterally. And then the kidney should be positioned in a sagittal manner. Both the anterior and the posterior side should be fully imaged, and the kidney fully imaged from the upper to the lower pole, fully assessed from the upper and the lower pole. So here are some findings that we can appreciate over the normal ultrasound of the kidney. The echogenicity of the kidney varies with the age, and the renal size changes over the lifetime of an individual. Basically, for the echogenicity of the kidney, we use the liver as a benchmark. In case of the hyperechoic, it is brighter. For hypoechoic, it is darker. And for anechoic, it is black without the echoes. So the thickness of the inner parenchyma is the average distance between the inner capsule and the central band of glucose, and the cortical thickness is of greater than 7 mm. So basically, this is the right kidney and this is the liver. So using the liver as a benchmark, we can see that the renal cortex is hypoechoic as compared to the liver, whereas the central portion, which comprises of the collecting system, the blood vessels, and the renal adipose tissue, it is hyperechoic as compared to the liver. So procedural applications are the percutaneous renal biopsy, and the limitations when there's a morbidly obese patient is there, when there is excessive intestinal gas or the bowel gases are there, when there's a physical deformity and lack of the specificity for the renal tumor type, except the AML, because the AML can be distinguishable on the basis of the ultrasound, whereas the small renal masses of the less than 2 centimeter size cannot be appreciable on the basis of the ultrasound, for which we have to go through the conventional imaging. So the transabdominal pelvic ultrasound. So there are many indications of the transabdominal pelvic ultrasound for assessment of the bladder volume, assessment of the prostate size and the morphology, demonstration of the secondary size of the bladder after obstruction, evaluation of the bladder wall configuration and thickness, of evaluation of hematuria, detection of urethral seals, assessment for the uterine obstruction, for clot retention, for confirmation of the catheter position and removal of the retained catheter, and the guidance of the FPC placement and establishment of the bladder volume before and after flow rate determination. Technique is the patient should be placed in a supine position, and again a low frequency transducer probe low frequency transducer probe is used, that is between 3.5 to 5 megahertz, and this examination should be done in the supine position in a quite comfortable room, and the patient should be properly draped, and the care of the patient comfort and the privacy should be there. This examination requires the moderately full bladder. So here are some pictures which we are quite familiar with. So evaluation of the bladder done regarding the lumen. If there are any stones, any tumor present inside the lumen of the bladder, to assess the bladder wall configuration, the bladder wall thickness, volume, and the presence or the absence of the stone. The structures around the bladder, like in females, the presence of the uterus and the ovaries can be seen. In the males, the presence of the prostate. And in cases of the distal uterine obstruction, we can appreciate the distal hydrouterus. So these are the pictures demonstrating the assessment. The first picture, you can see the demonstration of the assessment of the bladder volume, which we can be obtained with the assessment of the 3 dimensions, width, length, and height. Then in the second picture, we can see that there is a distal hydroureter, which will demonstrating the distal hydroureter, which will indicating as the lower urinary tract obstruction. And again, there is ultrasound which shows the transabdominal ultrasonography of the prostate, which is showing the protrusion of the prostate. The prostate is large enough to cause a protrusion into the bladder. So this is how we can demonstrate the bladder outlet obstruction as well. And in the last picture, there is a picture of the uterus. So in this picture, there is a flow which can be a Doppler flow which can be applied over the normal B mode grayscale ultrasound, and we can see the emergence of the urine from both the urethral orifices. So the clinical application of the urethral jet is still has been questioned, but approximately 10 minutes of the examination is required to verify the absence of the urethral jet. So the applications of the transabdominal pelvic ultrasound is used to assess the percutaneous aspiration of the bladder with or without the catheter placement, also used in the treatment of the bladder stones, and ultrasound guided aspiration for the peritoneal drainage after the bladder perforation. But it yields the limited information in the empty bladder, as we all know, and pelvic structure is difficult to evaluate in patients with a protuberant abdomen. Then ultrasonography of the scrotum, the indications are the assessment of the scrotal and testicular masses, assessment of the scrotal and testicular pain for evaluation of scrotal trauma, infertility, follow-up after scrotal surgery, and evaluation of the empty or the abnormal scrotum. Since it is a superficial structure, so high-frequency transducer probe is used to yield the excellent and detailed anatomic and the physiologic information. The range of the transducer frequency probe is between 7 to 18 megahertz. Patient should be supine with the scrotum supported on a towel or onto the anterior thighs. Sagittal and the transverse views should be taken. So it is very important to document the size, volume, and the echo texture of the testis. Testicular blood flow with a color Doppler should be documented, and a spectral Doppler used to evaluate the intertesticular blood flow. So this is the picture showing the normal appearance of the testis with the bilateral normal appearance of the testis with no other lesions seen inside it. And on the right side, we can see that there is a testis with the fluid collection around it, probably the hydrocele. Again, congenital or the acquired condition, which is characterized by the presence of the fluid in the layers of the tunica vaginalis. Then this is the Doppler that has been applied to the grayscale imaging of the scrotal ultrasound, and it shows the normal flow over the bilateral testis. And so can anyone tell about this sign? What is this sign is actually for over the right side? So this is the classical whirlpool sign basically, and this is indicative of the testicular torsion basically, and testicular torsion. And this is the spiral twist demonstrated in the course of the spermatic cord on the grayscale ultrasound. So the applications of the ultrasound, scrotal ultrasound is for the percutaneous axis if they are small or the non-palpable lesions. So for the biopsy of that particular lesion or the injection of the dye, for the localization during the open biopsy for the testicular sperm aspiration and the percutaneous epididymal sperm aspiration. But the caution should be used when interpreting Doppler flow studies in the evaluation of the suspected testicular torsion. Hallmark is the absence of the intertesticular blood flow, and paratesticular flow in the epididymal collaterals may appear within hours of the torsion. Comparison with the convoluted testis should be done. So, sonography of the penis and the male urethra. So indications are the evaluation of the penile vascular dysfunction, documentation of the fibrosis of the corpora cavernosa, localization of the foreign body, evaluation of the urethral structure, diverticulum, assessment of the penile trauma or the pain. So penile and the urethral ultrasound is performed with again a high frequency transducer of 12 to 18 megahertz, and this means the phallus in the longitudinal and transverse plane, and it should be done in a systematic fashion, beginning at the base of the penis and proceeding distally towards the glass. So, in this image, we can see that there are three erectile tissues are present: the corpora cavernosa distally and the corpus spongiosa ventrally. So, it is possible to get an image of the proximal urethra and the corporeal bodies by scanning the scrotum or the pelvis. So, applications of penile ultrasound to rule out the erectile dysfunction and to differentiate it between the two types of the erectile dysfunction, the arteriogenic from the with the help of the this penile artery Doppler, we can differentiate between arteriogenic ED and the vasculogenic ED. And the penile artery diameter of less than 1 mm can often be the first indication of the vascular disease. And the criteria for the erectile dysfunction: when the peak systolic velocity is less than 25 centimeter per second, cavernosal artery dilation of less than 75%, and when the acceleration time of greater than 110 milliseconds. So this is the normal penile artery flow within the corpora cavernosa. Now comes the transrectal ultrasound. So the indications are assess the prostate volume, prostate size when there are normal DRE findings, when there is a prostatic assessment with a sonographic control biopsy, when there are suspicion of the prostatic cyst, when there is evaluation for an aspiration of the prostatic abscess, assessment for the suspected congenital normality, lower unit tract symptoms, pelvic pain, prostatitis, metaspermia, infertility. This is the truss guided image which shows the transistor tube that is being installed into the rectum, and so this can lead to the demonstration of the prostate, and interiorly the bladder can be seen. So technique for the truss is the high frequency transducer of 7.5 to 10 megahertz should be used. It can be a biplane or the single plane transducer. So it is essential to perform the DRE prior to the truss, and if there are positive findings of the DRE, like if there is tenderness, mass, rectal stricture, there is a discharge with the bleeding, then the truss can be pre-filled. So after insertion, perform the survey of the prostate from base to apex, including the seminal vesicles and the rectal wall. So the findings are the echogenicity, which is best evaluated by comparing the left and the right side of the prostate. In young male, prostate is homogeneous with zones, often difficult to visualize. But in older males, the glandular and the stromal elements, they are increasing. They are enlarged in the size of the conditional zone and occasionally the peripheral zone. And in young males, the peripheral zone is often the hyperreflective to the central zone, but the transitional zone is, however, difficult to differentiate from each other. And the fibromuscular stroma is positioned always anterior to the urethra. So the applications are the drug-guided biopsy and the prostatic cyst aspiration. Limitations are when the bowel filtration is sometimes necessary for imaging and when the body's habitat is difficult to adequate image the base of the prostate, minor vesicles, and blood. Thank you.